thing doesn't work right.
Here we go.
We're
recording. We're live, folks. How are you? And as we go through this, a little technical. And let's go.
The views and opinions expressed by the guests of Sasquatch Experience do not necessarily reflect the opinion of the hosts, sponsors, or affiliates of the Sasquatch Experience. As always, listener discretion is advised.
911, what are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
Does a legend walk among us, lurking in the forests of our world?
Did you see what it was? Was it a person or an animal or?
I can't tell. All I know is that my sensor light came on and I just happened to glimpse and see this thing running across the yard. A good-sized man or something. It looks like a man. I don't know what it was.
For over 15 years, we've talked with scientists, researchers, investigators, and witnesses, trying to gain insight and proof around the existence of this mysterious entity.
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
Tia!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh. Okay, hang on.
He's right...
Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, God, he's big.
Okay, what's he doing in your yard?
He's looking at me.
Join us as we continue into the investigation of the Sasquatch Experience. And good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Sasquatch Experience. I'm Sean the Fort Chop Forker, Vance Nesbitt, Henry May, and James Baker. Look at that. Almost got us all right at the same time. And we're all back this week. We're all back this week, guys. It feels nice to have us all back in the saddle. And Vance, you look great. You sound great. Thanks for being here.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks. And I always know I look great, but I'm not too modest.
It's getting deep, folks. Get out the galoshes. Well, guys, it is the week before Christmas, so happy holidays to the people out there. Happy Kwanzaa, happy Hanukkah, day 2 of Hanukkah there for our Jewish friends, and we got a lot to celebrate this week. So day 2, so going to be a good week, folks. I love the holidays. You guys got any traditions you got that you keep going every year? Anything you do special?
Yeah, pretty much. We stay out of blizzard conditions that's going to head our way. So we do our best to, seek cover and then open our presents in warm shelter. That's what we do.
Yeah, definitely have that to look forward to this week. What about you, Henry? You got anything special you do over the holiday?
We're just going to get together and have a Christmas meal and open presents.
Nice.
Very nice. Now, are you a turkey or a ham family?
Usually a ham family on Christmas.
Nice. Even better.
What about you, Vance? You turkey, ham, beef? What are you?
Actually, I do ham and king crab legs.
Oh, there you go.
That's the route I like to go. Yeah, it's the king crab legs.
Definitely not a Hanukkah celebrator right there. And go ahead, James. What do you do? What are you?
Well, I got 2 traditions. Usually because we work that whole week, I try to pack in whatever I can. I usually work Christmas Eve. I work Christmas Eve this year. But I always like the Monday before Christmas. Me and my best friend, we go shopping for all the people we forgot about.
No, not people we forgot about. That's not true this year.
Who's that best friend there, Bake?
We but we go to all these little places and pick up stuff that we got 4 people left on the list. It's we even have the discussion.
This year it was on purpose. We did it on purpose today. We really did. It wasn't that we forgot about anybody. This year it was we did it on purpose. It was a lot of fun. Although I tell you, this is not the week to shop. The stores were busy, and I think even more so because of the potential for weather come this weekend. So, folks, we love you. Be safe out there. I hope you have a safe and happy holiday. And we're going to talk about Bigfoot here now for the rest of the hour. Got a good show lined up tonight. Oh, what do I do? I forgot to talk about me. That's unusual.
Talk about you. What do you do for the holidays?
Well,
we go to my wife's parents on Christmas. We do Christmas Eve with my family at my grandparents.
Right.
Which is usually soup sandwiches, that kind of thing. And do guests. This year we're actually doing a Christmas dinner there. Then we're going to my in-laws on Christmas Day, where we do ham and turkey. We're a ham and turkey fan. Sometimes we do beef if we want to keep it spicy, but we ham and turkey this year. And then, but the kids and I, we watch every holiday episode of The Office. So every Christmas episode of The Office. Then we watch every Christmas episode of Mrs. Brown's Boys, which isn't for
even better.
But I'm
there you go.
A parent. So, and then A Year Without a Santa Claus, and then Home Alone 2. And then that was the end. So we all crammed that in the last week. My older kids want to do Christmas horror movies. And I'm not opposed to that, but it's we got to find a way to work those in. So it's going to be a busy week here when I'm not working with the Forker family, but we're excited. I love this time of year. Thanksgiving and Christmas are great times, not just because of the food, but you really do, if you appreciate it, get to spend time with your family a little bit. And today was also my youngest son's birthday. He turned 12, so my baby's 12 years old.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Rylan Jackson. And appreciate everybody who sent their birthday greetings on Facebook. It put a smile on his face. I show them to him, so thank you again. Family's important, guys. It's one of the few things that, you believe it or not, you can choose your family. I have 3 brothers right here that I do a show with every week. And so you can pick your family, but enhance your life with people that make your life better. That's all I'm saying. Choose wisely, love strongly, and just have a good time, because we're not on this planet very long.
Totally agree.
In the scope of things, what's 100 years if we're lucky, right? I plan on living 150, but look at me. I'm a little on the large side. We'll see if I can get to 150.
Yeah, but you know what? Like you said, Merry to everyone that is tuned in and everyone that is listening. We really wish you a very Merry Christmas, holiday season, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever it is you celebrate.
You got the denomination,
party together.
Celebrate it.
Yeah.
That's right. You like it. We love it, folks. That's what we're doing here. But guys, tonight we've been on themes for the last couple weeks. We did the paranormal question. And Vance, were you on that episode with us? I don't remember.
Yes, I was.
The paranormal question. And then we did, what was the last show we did, guys? God, my mind. What is wrong with it tonight?
Well, the last show that we did led us into the whole paranormal question to begin with. And you said, okay, this would be a great place for us to pick up it. Right.
It was Bigfoot in the media, then to the paranormal question. We put a Sasquatch Experience Classics up with Scott Harriet, which is always a good episode to listen to. Go back and take a listen to that. It's on Spotify. Anywhere you pick up a podcast, it's on there. And now this week, we're going to talk about government cover-ups, government conspiracies. Is there a government conspiracy when it comes to kind of suppressing the existence of Bigfoot? Now, for some people, that question is just as synonymous as with UFOs and everything else. Where I think it's different for us is there are stories of encounters and stories of, let you take a look at Sergeant Todd Neese. We've had Todd on the program, when he was out conducting military exercises and had his sighting while doing military exercises. Stories of people that have said they've taken bodies from Mount St. Helens when the eruption happened there. But then the one issue I'm going to talk about tonight, I remember reading it in Tom Powell's book, The Locals, which is the Battle Mountain, Nevada fire, the forest fires, and what happened in that scenario. And then anything you guys kind of want to talk about. And I believe also we had Dwayne Pintoff on the show not long ago, and he talked about an incident where he was out in the PNW and observed black helicopters, doing some sketchy things. And of course, if you guys have been following Sasquatch Unearthed Mysteries of the Ridge, we talked, there's a whole episode where we've talked about government involvement. I've never experienced anything, guys, that, would lead me to say that I'm actively engaged or being suppressed about, Bigfoot. I will tell you that while Tim Cassidy and I were out we had that incident in 2005 at Keystone State Forest. We found what we thought to be a large tooth. We showed it to a park ranger, took a picture of it. The park ranger goes, "Oh no, that's a deer hoof core," which I'd never heard of before. It looked like a damn tooth. And we gave it to the park ranger and never saw it again. Probably stupid on our part. Fast forward to almost 10 years later, and we're at the house of Trapper from Mountain Monsters. Trapper John, good man, John Tice, very lovely man. And aside from what you see on TV, there was a real remarkable human being there. Good dude, treated us just like family. We ate all his cheese. But as we're going through his drank a lot of moonshine and ate all his cheese. But as we're going through the house, he's showing us his trophy. Big game hunter. He's taking game trophies from all over the world. But we were he goes into a safe and pulls this thing out. And the thing he shows me, which is a tooth, is the exact same thing that Tim Cassidy and I saw at Keystone State Park. We were stupid enough to give it to a park ranger, and we never saw it again. DCNR officer, whatever you call them, same damn thing. But we never saw it again. What was it? I don't know. We never had it long enough to do any kind of analysis, take a few pictures of it. Oddly enough, the hard drive in that computer I had those pictures on was fried, and I don't have any backups of it. Maybe on my MySpace, if I can find a way to get back onto MySpace and get them, I might find them. But not something I can find. I have some hard drives floating around the house that, if I could plug in and might be able to get the data and see what's on there. But it's interesting, guys. What about you? Before we go into this and talk about these things, where are you guys at? Have you had any experiences yourselves? Or is there anything that leads you to be pro or con of the government cover-up?
Well, I'll kick it off just only because I'm the first one that uttered a word. I have heard a few stories, testimonial stories, and one of them was a semi-truck that hit a theoretical or supposed Bigfoot on a rural road, and I believe it was a logging semi.
Okay.
And it hit this creature, and it was believed that it was killed. And he reported to the police that he had an incident. He hit an animal. The truck was disabled at the time. And vehicles came out and they covered the body. They examined the body. They recovered the body. And then they put the body on another flatbed that they had summons to come to that location and took the body away. And yet they never discussed with the truck driver, you just hit a bear.
Yeah.
But the truck driver explained that this thing had hands like a human, was hair covered, and stood 8 feet tall when he hit it with his truck. So it seems to me that it would make sense. It makes a lot of sense to me that there would be at least a government intervention, and for a plethora of reasons as to maybe why that there may be an intervention to taking such a creature away and removing it from the site and saying, nothing else more. You could go from reasons to it has partial human DNA and therefore it has to have civil rights, or it has to have a certain domain. All those things can be argued. But the point is just the story alone of having these vehicles show up and take the creature on a flatbed and take it away and just tell the driver, it was nothing more than a bear that you hit, even though the driver certainly contested that whole argument. No, this thing had 5 fingers, it had a hand, it had a face, 2 eyes that were, forward set, it had a nose, it was very human-like. No, that's not what you hit. You hit a bear. Okay, but who were these people that came out and took this thing away? That was my question. What agency
Where did the bear
was
go?
it that was called out to take that away?
What agency do you think it would be?
Fish and Game?
I would immediately go to the Department of the Interior.
Yeah.
Yes.
But what would their arm be? Would it be through the local DCNR to collect it, or do you think it would be? That's an interesting question. What type of enforcement does the Department of Interior have? I don't think it would necessarily be FBI.
No.
at all.
I don't think it would be
definitely be
FBI
something
either.
agriculturally, right? Could be the
I would
USDA.
think- I would personally think the majority of
Bigfoot, what's
this
for dinner?
interception would be through the Department of Interior.
Yeah, it would make, it's the one that makes the most sense. But what
Go
I guess
ahead, Jake.
go ahead, buddy.
I guess my key question during your whole conversation is one thing is, gentlemen hit a item or an animal or whatever.
Right.
And then all these players came into motion. People who knew what to do with it. People knew what to get, vehicles to get. People knew who to contact. People, whatever. So the question is, in that area, there has to be like a trained response team
Right.
for these things. Like,
Yeah,
it's
you
not
would
just
think so.
because if he just called AAA and the AAA is like, who the hell do I call to pick this? No. He made one call and someone picked up that he hit something. So they
Right.
knew there was something in the area. They send a response team that is prepared, that clearly had enough info, like Men in Black, that said, hey, oh yeah, dude, you just hit a gas pocket or blah, blah,
Right,
blah.
right.
Like, they knew the story right off the bat.
Right.
They disappear the next day, and no one and none of that group ever has a conversation with anybody. And he clearly didn't know any of them, so they might have been local, they might have not have been. But the fact is like they
Hey, back
had a
up.
team on standby waiting to do this.
Right.
You know, like fully trained.
No, yeah. All right, Sean, what was your interjection there?
No, so there is an Office of Law Enforcement and Security through the Department of the Interior, OLES,
Yes.
that could potentially. They also have, I guess, a division called the Serious Incident Review Group, which, that's worth exploring in itself. And the reason why I say that is I think it's important that we know, what would be the process if we had to look at it logically. What would be the process upon which this would be handled? How would it be investigated? How would it be documented? What should we really be looking for if someone's coming out to look into this situation?
Mhm.
It wouldn't be the FBI, because that really wouldn't make any sense, right? That's
No,
not
no.
the purpose of the FBI.
Right.
So we do know now that they have their own law enforcement. They are called park rangers. There's some authority upon which they can operate. But then also, when these missing people cases have happened, we've seen that they mobilize the National Guard.
Right.
So could potentially it be, some sort of National Guard involvement at all. And the only reason I'm talking about this, look, it's all conjecture, but if we're going to look at it, let's look at it logically. Let's look at it and start putting together some sort of, SOP, I guess, in my mind. How would this happen? What would make sense? What are some red flags that you should and shouldn't look for if you're hearing a story about this, I guess. So I mean, it's conjecture, but it's important.
Right.
Exactly. Whoever they sent out there was trained to handle it. Didn't flinch to see what they saw. So
Bob,
there's a training ground somewhere that says, hey, when you see this, you shut your mouth and say you're Bob from blah, 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 and you put it on the truck and you move on, and we act like it never happened.
Right.
There has to be a process. Otherwise, you'd have like 40 different Army and Navy people or National Guard going, dude, I picked up a Bigfoot over the weekend. It was
obviously we know they're good at it because there hasn't been any leaks from it.
Yeah,
which
right.
is kind of funny because with everything else in law enforcement, there's always some sort of leak and the information gets out there, right? These guys are tight-lipped. Bob writes in the chat, they probably know at least a few of the park rangers, etc. I forget the warden's name, but he was a famous ranger out west who had a credible sighting. And the incidents after Mount St. Helens blew up were a few that he knows of. And we were just talking about that, Bob. Thanks for joining us tonight. Bob, one of our Patreon supporters. And by the way, folks, you too can also support us for as little as $2 a month. Patreon.com/Sasquatch Experience. Thank you to all our supporters. We got some great shit coming your way. You've been getting some good stuff. You can't take them anywhere. You can't. And this is why people don't even want to pay $2. Just over here nippleizing whatever he was doing.
Whatever.
Anyway, he's mad because I made a scene at the Hobby Lobby.
He made more than a scene. I had to yell at him like a child. Anyhow, Henry, what do you think, bud? We've gotten the opinions of everybody else. You've been in this longer than all of us. What do you think? I'm pinning you down.
Well, if the government knows about UFOs, and look at the information they've released on UFOs in recent years.
Yeah.
I don't see why they wouldn't know about Sasquatch.
But look at the shitty stuff, Henry, that they've released about Bigfoot. When you look at the freedom files that were released under the Freedom of Information, it's all like Peter Burns stuff and newspaper articles and blacked out page, which it means nothing to me. Like,
crap we either already knew or
hair samples that have come back tested as deer. There's nothing dramatic in those. But Henry, you and I go back a long ways. And do you remember when we were back on the old Bigfoot forums back in the day, and the gentleman posted about the train that hit the Bigfoot?
Mm-hmm.
Where was that at? Do you remember? Was that in the PNW somewhere?
Oh, I don't remember where that was.
I don't remember either, but it was really interesting because, again, we go into a situation where there's a story, kind of like you were talking about, Vance, comes in through some, I don't even want to say anonymous. Henry, did the guy post it himself on the Bigfoot forums, or was it a secondhand story?
That I don't remember either. It may have been a secondhand story.
So I tried to look into it today and I couldn't find it. And I tried a couple days ago, couldn't find it. I'd have to go back into the Bigfoot forums, and I don't want to go back and relive some of those moments, get a little PTSD from those old adventures. But it's interesting because as crazy as some of these situations sound, there's always that what if part of your mind that takes you into the situation, and you start thinking about it and you start engaging in this thought process. And guys, no matter which way I look at it, I think we can all comfortably say here, at least 3 out of 4 of us believe that this creature exists.
Yes, right.
There's enough evidence to prove it. Baker, you're on the fence because you're still on the misplaced ape thing, and that's fine. But at least 3 out of the 4 of us does it. You're still willing to entertain it and have the conversation. So we could go ahead and say, yeah, this creature exists. There's enough evidence to do it. But now we have to deal with some stories that, whenever you start saying the government covers it up, it starts throwing layers of dirt on the credibility of the scenario, right? And the credibility of the whole field. Why do you think that is?
No.
Why? I mean, why do you think that we take these cases less serious than we do any other reciting report? Because I think they do get kicked to the side. I don't think we take them as seriously. After the Georgia Bigfoot hoax, I think anybody's really, crazy to step into, feels crazy to step into a pretty big investigation like that, because you would think that somewhere along the line, there would be some sort of proof, right? There'd be something out there that somebody could have witnessed something. There'd be something to document that there was this government force that was seen taking this thing.
All right.
But I don't know. Like, there has to be. What are you guys thinking about that? I'm just trying to generate some discussion here. Why do you think we as researchers take these cases as less credible as the general public?
Well, I think there's some information out there that the general public doesn't have access to.
Okay.
Sean, who was it that we were speaking to on one of our shows, whether it was Supernormal or an earlier Sasquatch experience that had the military map of wildlife creatures for the area in which they would be exploring as military training. And the map gave pictures of bears, deer, cougars, badgers, wolverines, and in the lower corner was a Bigfoot.
Was that
this
Todd?
was a
that
government issued map detailed to the creatures you may encounter while you're in the wilderness. Now, if the government is putting out this type, and I've researched that 7 different ways to Sunday, yes, that material actually exists from the military.
Hey, there's a train.
I hear big
And
train.
there's the train. It's running a little late today, isn't it? But it still had a distinctive picture of Bigfoot, and it says Bigfoot underneath it. Underneath, like it says, badgers and wolverines and cougars and other dangerous animals to be wary of. So it seems to me that if the military, and we're talking all 5 branches of the military, are public or did a publication for those that are doing this type of infantry movement in wildlife areas or in areas in the wilderness, that they'd be made aware of this. It seems to me that somebody knows something but are not sharing it with the general public. They're just sharing it within their most concerned community, which would be the military itself. But I don't remember who the individual was, if it was Johnson or somebody else that actually exposed that map. And then from there, I took a look at the map, and there's several different versions of it that still exist from the military. And it has Bigfoot right there in the pictures of wildlife you might encounter in the wilderness.
One could say they could put that in tongue-in-cheek wise, but that wouldn't make any, for a serious government document, right? That would be something that, would just be stupid and silly to put in there.
But why would the military, we're talking from Air Force, Marines, Navy, Army. They wouldn't waste our time with a fallacy of here, this is what you need to be aware of. They wouldn't put that in any kind of manual whatsoever. If it was just a fallacy, if they thought that there was any legitimacy to it whatsoever, let's put it in there.
Yeah, that's one hell of a practical joke, right?
But the Air Force the Air Force doesn't 100% respond that UFOs exist, but they have a protocol in case you saw one.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So the question is it the same with this? By the way, we don't believe it exists, but a lot of people have said that it has existed. This is what you would do if you saw it. Do you know what I mean?
Well, guys, before we go too far into this, we do have to take our break. It's that time already.
Oh, really?
It is. Wow. We got to take our news break, folks. Go take a break, smoke them if you got them, but sit down and listen to some news from Vance Nesbitt. We'll be right back, folks.
Woohoo!
This is the Sasquatch Experience Stranger Than Fiction Nudes. Nudes? Oh, please don't send nudes. I think Stranger Than Fiction Nudes is a Eric Fargiorgio thing. Carrie, don't tell Eric we're talking about him. Happy holidays to everyone. This is a holiday edition of the Sasquatch Experience Stranger Than Fiction News. And of course, I'm doing a little bit of research. And so what do? I research holiday Bigfoot. I have no idea that Jamaica produces a snack food called Holiday Bigfoot. It's a traditional Caribbean snack that is both tasty and cheesy. Probably from under cheese. Cheese from under your toes. Yeah, I had no idea. But on this edition of the Stranger Than Fiction Nudes, we're going to hear a story from Dean Gleason. It's a holiday Bigfoot story of the Seaway Valley Bigfoot research. And he shared this story 5 days ago, and I'm going to have Dean tell it in his voice. Dean, take it away.
A family had decided they were going to go and rent a cabin in the woods and spend a traditional Christmas, just the family themselves, having a good time and enjoying each other's company. So, the mom and dad decided one afternoon that they were going to go out and get Christmas presents and a tree to decorate the cabin. The children were mostly in their teens and were safe to be there by themselves, or so they thought. When they had rented the cabin from a Native American who owned it, he had told them not to go in the woods beyond the field, because that's where the hairy man lived, and he didn't like people in his woods. They all just laughed it off, thought it was a story he was telling the kids to keep them from going into the woods. Well, after Mom and Dad left, boys being boys, they decided that they were going to take a walk in the woods to see if the hairy man was really there. Well, the three of them walked around in the woods for about an hour, not seeing really anything out of the ordinary. They had seen a deer, they'd seen a couple of chipmunks, a squirrel or two, but nothing really out of the ordinary. Well, they decided to head back to the cabin. And on the way back, they noticed a smell, a very strong, musky smell. But not being from the country, they didn't really have any idea what that was. Well, as they were walking along, all of a sudden, they started getting pelted by small pebbles. They looked around, still didn't see anything. But then one of them looked up, and there in the tree was a squatch. and he had a handful of pebbles, and he was pecking them at the kids. They freaked out and started running back to the cabin. They got inside and shut the door and were scared to death, just hoping that Mom and Dad would be back soon. Well, after a while, their fear kind of wore off, and they went outside. Well, they went around to the back of the cabin where the woods came up close, and were just looking off into the woods to see if they see anything. Then they heard it. The Squatch screamed at them, and one of those big, I've heard them and they're really scary, aggressive howls. Well, the kids started to run back to the house when they realized that the Squatch was coming to the cabin. They got inside and locked the door, and they realized that the middle boy, age-wise, was still outside. The two inside would not unlock the door for him. They were so scared. They were hiding under the table. He looked around, and the only thing he could do was get inside an old chest freezer that was out in the yard. He got inside and looked out through the crack because he didn't shut the lid all the way. And there the Squatch was, standing right next to the freezer. He did not know what to do. He was scared to death. Then the Squatch went up on the porch and looked in the window. He walked around the cabin for a few minutes, didn't do anything really too bad, other than scare the kids, and then went back to the woods. When the parents got home, the kids were freaking out, and especially the one that got left outside. He was mad at his brothers. Well, they didn't believe him at first. They thought they were just making up a story because they didn't get to go into town with them. Well, later on that afternoon, the father walked out back, and there in the mud, right next to the woods, were Squatch tracks. It had a happy ending. They ended up having a very nice time at the cabin for the weekend, and the Squatch didn't come back and bother them. I hope you enjoyed the story. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays if I don't talk to you before. You have a great day.
Sleigh bells ring, are you listening? In the lane, snow is glistening. A beautiful sight we're having tonight.
Thanks again to Dean Gleason at the Seaway Valley Bigfoot Research. You can find him over on YouTube at Seaway Valley Bigfoot Research. From all of us here at the Sasquatch Experience, thanks again for listening. We wish you a bumping free and pushing and shoving holiday shopping season.
And we're back. Vance, thanks for that news. Great segment there, buddy. Probably one of the better ones we've had here so far. Good job.
Yeah.
Seriously. Well done. Guys, chapter 11 in Tom Powell's book, The Locals. Still got, you hear me reference it quite a bit because I've been going back and rereading it. It's called Big Brother, right? And Big Brother, Merry Christmas to you as well. Got a couple comments in here before we go any further. Well, we know who this is. This must be Corey, our good friend. Dell and my friend Willard used to map for natural resources. They discovered a cave on a rocky rock bed that had bones in there that were slightly cone-shaped. They were very large and also small representing young. A team came in and cleared the bones, fly in and no bones left. This is in Canada. So, I mean, that interesting stories there. Merry Christmas from user. Merry Christmas to you too as well. And of course, we're seeing all kinds of, there we go. Things there. Just thought we'd throw those in there before we go too far. And now again, chapter 11, the locals. You heard me reference at the beginning of the show, Battle Mountain, the Battle Mountain wildfire. And if you'd like, I'd read some of that to us, guys. And again, this is from Tom Powell's book, The Locals. You can go ahead and buy it anywhere books are sold. And of course, you can't see me because I'm covering my screen. But before I go in this, Casey's got a comment here. So let's read the comment first. My biggest question in regards to if the government knows they exist is what sort of domino effect it would lead to if they were proven to be real. What sort of impact would it have on industries like logging, and what rights would they have? What would they be protected, or what would they be classified as? Who would decide that? It leads to many more questions. And yeah, Casey, we've had that conversation many times over the years it does create a whole cascade of issues. And there's also some other implications that even go further than that. Like,
right.
How does it impact personal property? How does it impact public property? How does it impact business? How does it impact, I mean, again, like you said, Casey, it creates a whole domino effect and a whole series of what ifs, and it becomes a very complicated problem. And it's a problem that I don't know if that's any easier to reconcile than the UFO problem.
Exactly.
Right. And in fact, if anything, it makes it a little bit harder because these things are in resident. They live here. They occupy the same land as we do. And again, it goes to what are they? What kind of rights do they have? Are they an indigenous people? A lot of questions that go into that. And right. I wish I had the answers to that. All I know is it's a very sticky situation. It would highly impact a lot of economical things, from natural gas to logging to paper to even religion. It's going to impact a lot of things. And I don't know if we're ready to tackle that yet. And the problem is we're never going to be ready. And push is going to come to shove one day when this happens. And then we're going to be left scrambling. But it makes it a little easier if somebody says, oh yeah, by the way, we knew they were here. We just didn't want to tell you because we didn't want to, screw up your life a little bit.
No,
more than it already is with everything else they've screwed up.
Back to the locals.
Back to the locals. Tom writes in August 7th, 1999, Battle Mountain, Nevada. 2 days earlier, a complex of range fires was started by lightning strikes over convective thunderstorms that formed in the hot, dry air over Battle Mountain, Nevada. And the report goes as follows. I observed an animal wounded by fire, moving on all fours, not like a bear, more like an ape. Firefighters captured animal, contacted local vet and medical doctor. U.S. Department Fish and Wildlife, Department of Interior, and Bureau of Land Management on the scene. Animal tranquilized and moved to unknown location. Those at the scene told not to talk about what they saw. Animal approximately 7.5 feet tall, long, human-like arms and legs, face not like man or ape, but mixed, genitalia, male, uncircumcised, and human-like. Hair covering most of the body except chest. Chest has hair, but sparse. Hands with sparse hair. Palm bare with 5 digits with human opposition of thumb and 5th digit. Speech attempted to communicate with caregivers once it realized they were attempting to care for it. Multiple burns to hand, feet, legs, and body. Some 2nd and 3rd degree burns using rule of 9s, approximately 45% of body with burns. Doctor and vet working together provided care and moved it to an unknown location locally. The notice given in violation of orders by BLM, DOI, and DF&W. Witnesses numbered in the area of 20 to 25. Word is out in the government agencies and among the firefighters since an MD was called out. Many thought a firefighter was injured. Please note that I am a government employee of one of the listed agencies fighting brush fire in the wilderness area of Nevada, and orders not to disclose information. I believe a cover-up is in the making. People need to know the animal needs to be kept alive and studied and released into a protected area. So that was written very much like somebody who's got some experience writing notes.
Yeah.
It's detailed. It's not full-on sentence, but it's enough detail and description that you're getting the core. You're able to paint that mental picture. You're getting the core information,
right?
As if somebody was sitting at a signal and sending out a signal, writing it in signal. You know what I'm saying? That's what struck that to me.
But there's 2 segments in that story you just read, Sean, that have stuck out with me, and I've read that story in the past too. One was an unidentified government agency. But earlier, when you were reading that, what government agency was involved? But the Department of Interior.
Yeah, and as
we brought up earlier in the show,
and I was just going to tell you as I was pumping through during the news break, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Office of Law Enforcement, they would be on the scene. Now, the Bureau of Land Management, but it's also a law enforcement agency, and land management probably also because of the fires that are taking place. But if I was to think about protocol, it would make sense for those departments to be dispatched, right?
And if you were in an emergency situation in that environment, in that location, that would probably be one of the agencies you would contact is Fish and Wildlife. And Fish and Wildlife is intertwined with the Department of Interior.
Right.
So I would
division of the
assume
Department of
that
Interior,
any
absolutely.
communication that happens between Fish and Wildlife would also go to the Department of Interior also. I'm just assuming, I don't know, I haven't seen any of that evidence, but it seems like whenever Fish and Wildlife are called into any one of those type of situations, it seems as though the Department of Interior is there expediently, and they know how to handle this situation. Like Baker brought up earlier, it seems like they have a protocol knowing how to deal with the situation immediately.
Right.
Just like he brought up with the UFO situation. We have an unidentified vehicle or something that hit the ground, and the next thing you know, you have specific military that shows up to recover that vehicle and cover it up and get it out of the area. There has to be a lot of puzzle pieces in place in order for that to happen.
Yeah, and like you said, Vance, you talk about response. It makes sense that these divisions would be dispatched to this, the situation, right? That what's interesting is also is they dispatched a doctor and a vet.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you think because of the potentiality for having other animals injured, there would be a vet there anyhow, or some sort of animal doctor. You'd have a physician in case a firefighter got hurt. As you said, they thought the physician was dispatched because somebody got hurt.
Right.
A firefighter was wounded. But then also you look at some of the descriptors in there, again, match up to some things that we've seen in other reports. The genitalia description. We've heard many times of uncircumcised, human-like genitalia. The hands sparsely covered with hair, with the fifth, digit and opposable thumb. Right. None of those things are uncommon, and it's not like they made this thing of any more gigantic than it needed to be. It wasn't a 12-foot tall Bigfoot, complete 45% burns on the victim on the creature with a 7.5 foot tall. That's an average Bigfoot. It's not anything monstrous or out of the ordinary. I just think there's a lot of detail.
That's still monstrous to some of us.
Well, it is, but when we think about Bigfoot, it's really not that.
I understand. Right.
Yeah, that's like the average size of a Bigfoot. Now,
there's
a lot of detail in that to unpack. And if someone was making this up, they went through a hell of a lot of effort to make that up. They went through detail, very descript, very concise way of taking notes. I would think you'd have at least butchered the government agencies that would have been involved.
Right.
There's no mention of FBI whatsoever, which is what you would typically hear in a hoax.
Yeah, I don't see the FBI having any involvement in it. But
but that would be.
I would personally take a step back and say that David Paulides has done a lot of Freedom of Information Act requests, and he's been asked, "Well, yeah, it'll cost you $12 million to get the information on it." Okay, so who's got $12 million outside of a large corporation, which is not asking for that information? As an individual, you don't have that kind of pocket change to throw out $12 million to get information. Why is it so much money? Why?
Was it 12? I thought it was like over $1 million. I don't know if it was 12. I thought it was over $1 million, but still for an average citizen, it's a lot of money.
One case that they asked him that it would cost him $12 million. I'm sure there were other cases that, was over the $1 million mark, but come on, that's crazy to ask that kind of money to get a Freedom of Information Act to begin with. Something seems a little nefarious to me.
If you're filing under Freedom of Information, that's not our job to put together a budget to do it. It's the law.
No, not at all. It should be a free of cost to the request. Absolutely.
That's right.
But it seems like the park range, or the park rangers were asking for this kind of money from the state parks. That doesn't make sense. Yeah, Bake, what's your point?
I beg to differ on some of that Freedom of Information, because I think that if they have to pay people to put these reports together, whoever wants the information should have to do part of that cost.
But that's not
Do you
what the
know what I
law
mean? Like-
says. I don't.
But
believe. I
does
don't
it
think the
cost
law
that much
says-
to put that much
No,
information
I don't-
in out of a database?
unless they have to get like 42 different agencies, you're correct. Like if there's a database and there's just Bob who sits there and
Yeah.
you pay an hour worth of his time, which is like say $60 is worth his time an hour, and he
Right.
took him 3 hours to process the paper that he gave you, then you owe him those 3 hours. But like I don't think I don't think $1 million, but if like the information, like if you have to take all this information from 40 different sources and then you have to compile it into what Bob, like John, what this guy wants, and then you have to compile it into this and this and this. If it takes this guy 6 weeks to do what you want, then you owe him that 6 weeks of pay. Now, should it be $1 million? No. But should it
No.
be something?
So
Yeah,
the
well, that's
law-
fine if
the
it's
Freedom of
something.
The Freedom of Information Act, just doing a basic search there without going
Yeah.
into the details, is for a typical requester, the agency can charge for the time it takes to search for records and duplication of those records.
Right.
For a typical requester. So, I mean, there is some merit there, I guess, in some respects. Like the law does say, there is some expectation of
Right.
the
Or you'd have
requester
some
to
guy
pay.
every day requesting, just walking in every day and going, hey, I need these 16 weeks of records.
No, right.
And then tomorrow he comes in with a new request and he would just be eating up, one guy's time for the next 25 years.
But that is a problem with the Freedom of Information Act. You have people that are going to put Freedom of Information Acts in for everything, and it's going to clog up the pipes. That's why
what
it takes
happened
so
to that
long to get a
accident that
response.
happened on Route 172? Yeah, no, I get
in
that.
1984.
Our executive producer, Brian Corbin, Vance. Sorry I'm late to the party, but have you discussed W.J. Sheehan's government map with an actual Bigfoot warning? It was Sheehan that we had on the show talking to us.
It was
about
Sheehan. Thanks, Corbin.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah,
Brian.
because we did
And
talk about that earlier.
birthday.
Right.
Happy birthday to you. I know it was a couple days ago, but happy birthday, boss. Good to have him with us here. But again, even moving aside from freedom of information, that's just a requester. Doesn't mean you're going to get anything back. And we've seen what comes back from the Freedom of Information Act with Bigfoot. I mean, it's still at any point doesn't even run parallel to the involvement because you're not going to get documentation on that anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things you're going to get under Freedom of Information Act. You'll get sent back that are just Sharpie pages.
A lot of it will be redacted. Oh, of course it will. A lot of it will be redacted. Mm-hmm.
And if I was somebody that paid $1 million and they sent that to me, I'd be a little pissed.
About it. I'd be a little irritated.
That would be the biggest. That would be the largest government fuck you could think of to spend all that money to send and to get back just nothing but like 500 sheets of paper, a ream of paper with just Sharpie through 98%.
But again, does that not make the case even more substantiated to the fact that they are burying something?
Yeah, why it makes sense that they sent out the stuff they sent during the Freedom of Information Act, the Peter Burns shit, the hair samples. Like, again, guys, we go back to that beautiful, beautiful quote from the X-Files: "The best way to hide the truth is to keep it in plain sight."
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So by acknowledging that this is what we've done and this is what has come from it, they can answer the question without answering the question. And we know that's how the government plays in everything.
Right. This is true. But if you're asking for that astronomical amount of money to get information on something, it seems like, just to me, it seems like you're asking for that astronomical money for you to throw your arms up in the air and go, yeah, never mind. Because it's a deterrent to keep you away from something that may actually have happened.
If you have the $12 million to pay for that Freedom of Information Act, chances are you have the money to grease somebody else's palms to really get you the answer to the question.
Very true. Very true.
I don't think. Yeah, you'll have an answer to a question. It may not be the fully baked answer, but you're going to get a lot closer to the rest of us.
Right.
Will to that. That's just the reality. Money talks, right?
And probably if you use the $12 million to find another source, when you got your answer, you probably would become part of the group that just shuts the hell up and doesn't say it again. Because
Right.
there's a good,
Yes.
there may be a secondary reason why, like when someone becomes president of the United States or a congressman or something, some of these things that we've never heard of, they learn. And there's a reason they shut up about it. It's not a direct threat. It's more of a, by the way, your kid goes to this school and this happens here. That will stop happening if you open your mouth ever again.
Right.
Or just the fact is they tell them the truth, and it's like, it'd be like if tomorrow somebody walked up to you with a straight face, Vince McMahon, and said, wrestling is real. It all happened the way I put it on TV.
No.
Okay.
But
he was serious. Like he was like 120%, like it's real. And you would be like, I can't tell anybody about this because it's just so,
Yeah.
Well, I noticed a couple of days ago.
In your head.
And I'm not trying to switch gears into topics here. I just noticed a couple days ago that more substantiated evidence of the JFK assassination was just released. How many years ago was that?
But there's stuff that's not going to be released till like 2030, 2040.
Right,
I mean,
exactly. So what we're talking about right now may still be 30 years down the road before it's finally released.
And it very could be. And that's the other thing I'm thinking about is that, because of I don't know why they do it. Maybe it's to protect people that are still around and to give them.
Well, a lot of people, they lose interest in the whole subject matter altogether.
Sure. You hope that you can wait them out. And by the time people go to read it, they've had an accident or they've died of natural causes by then.
Right.
So the person that asked the original question isn't going to be around to get the information.
Right.
And by then, somebody else isn't going to ask the same question because everybody forgot about it.
Right. Exactly.
And that's why the cascade of that happens like 50 years down the road. Plus also to protect people. Right. In some cases, it may actually legitimately protect somebody who's still alive.
There may have been people who did shady things because their government told them to do it, and they don't need hey, Bob died. All right, we can bring this out now because there's nothing we can do to him. He can't be arrested for it.
No, exactly.
So we go back to Battle Mountain, right? And this is where, Tom, and I can tell you folks, if you start on chapter 11 in this story, which is page 217, the chapter called Big Brother, once again, The Locals by Tom Powell. I mean, this guy goes into detail. The guy they call Marty, it's a pseudonym they used for him. They start going in here. I'll just read a little bit more of what this says. And this is from one of the curators. Tonight, I talked with the gentleman for about 70 minutes. Although he is maintaining strict anonymity, I was able to put together a bit of a profile for the individual. This fellow, whom I will give the pseudonym Marty, is a male, full-time worker for a federal agency. Currently, he is involved in the joint firefighting efforts in Nevada. He has extensive EMT training and experience. He says that until this incident, he had seen it all in fighting fire, and these days he stays mostly in the truck manning the radio. He is friendly, but not effusive. He is intelligent, likable, and fairly observant, but he isn't outstandingly articulate. He is a matter-of-fact, low-key, seen-it-all kind of character. He has regular duties. His regular duties may be in personnel, and he mentioned that tomorrow he would be seeing the MD involved in the incident about other matters regarding the firefighter crew. It was obvious during our conversation that he was very tired. Our talk ended with Marty saying that he had to go to bed to get some rest. So, I mean, there's a point where he's talking to whoever's doing the interview.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to get a little background noise there. I'm sorry. And, he's adding more. They're adding more credibility to this guy.
Right.
They're adding more credibility to Marty. But what gets even more interesting is some of the material they put in there and talking about what they did to this creature. And here we go. I'll talk a little bit more of this. It didn't take long for medical services to get on the scene. The attending medical team included the regular MD for the fire crews, a vet that Marty didn't recognize, and one or more paramedics. The vet was taken aback at working on a creature so human-like, and he is reported to have allowed the physician to do most of the work. At some point, Demerol and morphine were administered. The patient was placed on a spine board, which was too small. He was then placed on a regular ambulance stretcher. The sides were left down because part of the body hung over too far. The feet hung off the end. A cut down was performed to obtain an intravenous line, and fluids were administered. No physical restraints of any sort were necessary upon the patient at any time. He either didn't or couldn't make any effort to resist. During the treatment of his wounds and the efforts at the life support, the patient communicated with moans, groans, and grumbling. Bowel sounds were heard by Marty, who was as close as 3 feet from the patient. No language like vocals were heard. The patient responded to touch, specifically by patting and stroking to him, so he responded to touch. 2 or 3 times, Marty mentioned that the patient was especially responsive to a young Native American woman who started ministering to him right from the very beginning. It also makes sense. We talk about Native interaction with Sasquatch. So, I mean, there's so much to that story, folks. You go buy the book and check it out. There's just so much of that leads me to believe, and leads Tom to believe, he goes on to a little later, that this was the real deal. Right. I first talked about this on the X Zone radio show with Rob McConnell way back in the day. Actually, that happened in 1999. I think I talked about it on the X Zone in 2005. So it wasn't even that 4 years after it happened, 4 or 5 years, right? So that was a lot more fresher at the time than it is now. But here we are, 20 years later to that.
Right.
And that could have been probably one of the more significant sightings in Bigfoot research. Right.
Yeah. Regarding the conspiracy or government cover-ups, there is an episode on Sasquatch Chronicles. And if you people want to go and listen to the episode, it's called The Deathbed Confession. And the deathbed confession, the story, I will just make it extremely brief, was a sheriff that was asked to assist with government agency in a helicopter to take down Bigfoot that was in an area that it should not be in. According to the humans, it should not be in. And
taken down like a maggot.
Taken down with firearms from a helicopter. It's a very interesting story. Because, like I said, it was a deathbed confession that, this gentleman that was involved in this case had audio recordings of what actually happened, because it was in a time period before video was really a thing and way before cell phones. So he had a tape recorder and he recorded the events that led up to this. But he was on the helicopter and was asked to step out of the helicopter onto the landing skid with his rifle and take down a juvenile and a mother. But this was all a government thing. It's called Deathbed Confessions. It's on Sasquatch Chronicles. You can listen to that. And again, it all goes back to the government cover-up thing. And you make your assessments to it, what you believe. And maybe, the government is well aware of what is going on and is not sharing with the general public for whatever reasons it's not sharing. And that list of the reasons why is so long right now. It's crazy. And it got brought up tonight. Is it because of logging? Is it because of protection? Is it because of DNA similar to humans and we have to give them civil rights? And that list just goes on for miles, and we don't have the answers to that. But it's certainly a very interesting. Right. That's what I was kind of referring to is, all those questions. Yeah, sure it does. It's a domino effect. Very much is.
Very much so. And I don't even think we could begin to speculate on what other things that would bring up. I mean, we can, because that's what we've done this whole friggin' show. But I mean, in all seriousness, it would impact a lot. And it's a crazy topic. We only talked about one story and a couple, little stories here without a lot of context, and we didn't even finish Battle Mountain. And here we are, for almost an entire hour of it already. And again, here we are.
That's what we do. Take your time.
We're gonna have to go back and do more, right? And it's why we do this stuff, folks, because the conversation is interesting, fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Baker, Henry, you guys have any final thoughts on this before we wrap up for the evening?
Henry?
Well, there have been supposedly cases where Sasquatch has been hit by a vehicle, and then the government comes along and confiscates the body. So,
but how did they know about it so quickly to be there? That's what Baker brought up earlier. There has to be a response team that has an entire protocol on how to handle a situation like that. Mm-hmm. That's what blows my mind. I think Baker's probably on the same page. It's like, wow, you have an entire response.
Yeah. I believe that our government, and I believe this in all heartiness, if they told us everything they knew, there's parts of the world we don't need to know. And as much as people rage against the machine that we need to know this and we need to know that, there are things that go on that we have no clue to knowing. And, honestly, it was like after, I always say after 9/11 and after some of these other things, like people are like, well, I said, you don't know how many things you don't know about because somebody that does really horrible things made sure that didn't happen.
Right.
You don't know. There's groups out there that do specific things. Like I said, their response team or whatever it is, they do these specific things so that you don't find out because maybe there's a reason we don't know. Like we could go into 50 different conspiracies on why we're lied to, but maybe the core of the lie is for the benefit of humanity, not to lie to us because it's funny.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No. Agreed.
No, it's a great point. And I think it's, everything we've talked about tonight, we kind of go back to the same, it's the conversation circular, right? We talked about who would respond, and we've answered that question several times. You both talk about how do they know? There has to be some sort of response built in. And we realize that there's these entities within government agencies that are set up to handle this. Maybe the protocol isn't for a Bigfoot, but maybe it's just an endangered species protocol in general.
Right. No, that's
maybe
a good point.
Just following a protocol that's established for something that's existent already, and but we don't know, because I think the question we have to find out, assuredly, and I think we get an inkling of that in the Battle Mountain case, is who responds to this thing, and the examples we get were the same ones we talked about in a logical discussion. The Department of Interior, the Department of the United States Wildlife Fish and Wildlife. And of course, the office of that we talked about, the not legal law enforcement,
Don't
office
forget
of law
FEMA.
enforcement. So, FEMA would be if there's a federal emergency involved, which would be if there was
they
a
have
fire.
really broad powers.
I guess if there's an emergency enact.
Yeah, right.
I mean, but you have to get pretty far on that. But again, here we go down the rabbit hole into the what ifs. And if we start thinking about things logically, though, it's there, and we can keep going on this. But we need to call tonight. But we will come back to this topic and revisit it.
Oh boy! If everybody could just have a very Merry Christmas, that would be awesome.
Yeah, folks, find us on social media: Sasquatch Experience on Facebook, Instagram, Squatch EXP on Twitter. We're all over the place. You can watch this show on many different places now. We're streaming on 8 different sites. So wherever you find us, we'll be there. Continue to support us. The Patreon's great. We love our supporters. Thank you. For as little as $2 a month, you can make this show even better for what it is. Henry, take us out with those final words.
Y'all be good or be good at it.
Woohoo!
On watching, folks.
Merry Christmas.
Happy
Merry
New Year.
Christmas.
We'll see you in 2023.
Yeah. Wow. See you next year.